In some of the wildest corners of the world, peace can collapse in a heartbeat. What begins as leisure, work, or even quiet reflection may suddenly spiral into chaos when survival instincts collide. From an RV park in Alaska to a yoga retreat in Montana, and from helicopter pilots in Russia to a farmer in rural Japan, the stories stretch across landscapes as varied as they are unforgiving. In this video, we'll uncover 6 chilling true stories of bear attacks on humans, tales of sudden danger, desperate survival, and the raw power of nature. The remote wilderness RV campground nestled along the shores of Cook Inlet near the southern tip of Alaska's backcountry had served as a refuge for adventurous travelers since the early 1980s. Situated about 40 miles from the nearest town, the site appealed to those searching for an authentic Alaskan experience, complete with pristine fishing waters, sweeping tidal flats, and distant mountain views that shifted color with each hour of the day. Over time, the facility earned a reputation among outdoor enthusiasts for its rustic charm, quiet isolation, and abundant wildlife sightings. Camp management consistently emphasized the importance of proper food storage, warning visitors that carelessness in bear country could invite serious danger. On the morning of August 29, 2025, 37 guests were spread across 22 RVs and several tent sites. The night before had brought an unusually heavy salmon run up the nearby river. Many campers had spent hours fishing, cleaning their catches by lantern light, and celebrating their success. Despite posted regulations regarding fish waste, scales and entrails were left scattered near the water's edge and around cleaning stations, their strong odor drifting far into the forest. Among the visitors was Thomas Whitaker, a 42-year-old construction supervisor from Oregon. He had arrived 3 days earlier with his children, 9-year-old Marcus and 11-year-old Isabella. Each summer, the family set aside time for one extended trip, and this year Thomas had chosen Alaska to share his love of fly fishing in wild, untamed waters. Their modest travel trailer was positioned at the eastern edge of the campground, overlooking a broad curve in the river where salmon had been leaping steadily since their arrival. For Thomas, the trip was more than recreation. It was a chance to pass on lessons in patience, skill, and respect for nature to his children. The trouble began around 11:30 in the morning, when a massive male grizzly, estimated at more than 800 pounds, emerged from the dense spruce that bordered the campground's western perimeter. Later investigation by rangers revealed that this particular bear had already been identified as a problem animal, one that had learned to connect human presence with easy food rewards. Carried on the wind, the scent of discarded salmon had likely drawn it from miles away. At first, the grizzly's arrival went unnoticed. Families prepared breakfast, anglers arranged tackle for another day on the river, and children played near the shoreline. The bear moved with startling silence for its size, keeping low and using the cover of scattered boulders and brush to mask its approach. It was not until the animal discovered an unattended cooler beside a motorhome that the quiet routine of the campground shattered. With a few swipes of its claws, the cooler was ripped apart, spilling ice, drinks, and food across the gravel. The crashing sound, followed by the guttural huffing of an agitated bear, captured everyone's attention. What began as shock quickly gave way to panic. The animal grew bolder with each success, moving from site to site in search of more food. Picnic tables were overturned, tents shredded, and equipment flung aside as the bear's paws tore through whatever stood between it and a potential meal. Campers shouted and scattered, many grabbing children or climbing into vehicles. The once peaceful campground dissolved into chaos. The danger escalated when the grizzly turned its attention to occupied RVs. Using its weight and claws, it raked through the siding of a travel trailer, peeling aluminum panels as if they were paper. Windows cracked under the pressure, leaving the elderly couple inside trapped in terror as their vacation home groaned and buckled around them. Inside his own trailer, Thomas had been sorting fishing gear. The first sounds of destruction reached him like distant thunder. When he looked outside, he immediately grasped the seriousness of the situation. His 2 children were still at the riverbank, skipping stones and collecting shells, unaware of the threat closing in. Years of construction labor had kept him strong, but it was the survival instincts from his earlier military service that now surged to the forefront. The grizzly, restless from its rampage, caught sight of movement near the water. The quick gestures and laughter of children triggered its predatory interest. From across the campground, Thomas saw the bear pivot and begin a steady advance toward the river. His stomach dropped as realization struck. He bolted from the trailer, his voice carrying across the grounds with urgent warning. The children turned, first confused, then terrified as they caught sight of the approaching animal. In seconds, the bear broke into a charge. Its speed was astonishing, closing distance with each stride despite its bulk. Thomas reached his children when the bear was still only 30 yards away. With no chance of retreating through the open grounds, he grabbed Marcus and Isabella and guided them straight into the icy water of the inlet. The cold hit with stunning force, locking muscles and shortening breath, but Thomas pushed them onward. The current tugged hard and the children struggled, yet he held fast, urging them across toward deeper water. The Grizzly reached the shoreline, pacing back and forth, agitated but hesitant to plunge into the swift current. Its growls echoed across the water, low and thunderous, while it waited for an opportunity that never came. Back in camp, others acted quickly. Experienced visitors knew noise could sometimes drive a bear away, so pots were clashed together in a sharp metallic rhythm. Some hurled folding chairs and gear, trying to divert its attention. The combined racket created a wall of disturbance that disrupted the animal's focus. After nearly 10 tense minutes, the bear seemed to lose interest. It abandoned the shoreline and wandered back through the devastated campground. It nosed at discarded coolers and overturned equipment before vanishing into the dark forest from which it had come. Thomas and his children, shivering and exhausted, emerged from the water on the far side of the inlet. They waited until the bear was gone before making their way back across. Campers helped pull them ashore, wrapping blankets around their shoulders. The relief was palpable, but the shock lingered. In the aftermath, the Whitaker family reflected on how close they had come to disaster. For Thomas, the experience marked a turning point. He later became a vocal advocate for stricter enforcement of food storage rules and broader education about living responsibly in bear country. The incident reinforced a sobering truth. In wild places, the smallest act of negligence can ripple outward, placing many lives at risk. On May 30th, 2023, the towering limestone cliffs of western North Carolina's mountain region had long drawn wildlife researchers, photographers, and documentary filmmakers. These dramatic rock formations, carved by centuries of erosion, provided nesting sites for numerous bird species, including the peregrine falcon, one of the world's most celebrated aerial hunters. The cliffs stood like stone fortresses above valleys lined with hardwood forests, their remoteness ensuring that human disturbance remained limited. For those dedicated to capturing authentic moments in nature, the setting offered an unmatched stage for observing animals behaving undisturbed. Director Clara Voss, 31, had spent months planning her latest shoot for an independent wildlife documentary. She specialized in projects that highlighted the fragile balance between species and environment, and this expedition was intended to showcase a conservation triumph. Her small crew of 3 included specialists accustomed to long days in rugged terrain, the kind of people who could haul camera rigs up steep trails, endure unpredictable weather, and maintain focus when patience was tested by hours of waiting for a fleeting, natural event. 2 days earlier, the group had established a modest base camp at the foot of the cliff face. From there, they could monitor peregrine falcon activity while keeping a respectful distance from the nesting birds. The site itself was stark yet beautiful. Boulders scattered across the slope, wildflowers pushing up through cracks, and a constant breeze carrying the resinous scent of surrounding trees. The filmmakers had focused on a particular pair of falcons that had successfully raised 2 chicks in a nest tucked into a ledge about 60 feet above the ground. For decades, peregrine falcons had been endangered in many regions, their decline driven by pesticide use and habitat disruption. Conservation efforts, however, had allowed populations to rebound. Clara wanted her film to highlight this recovery, offering a message of hope alongside striking visuals. Over the past several days, the adult falcons had become accustomed to the crew's presence. They continued their routines, soaring across valleys, plummeting at astonishing speeds during hunts, and returning with prey to feed their offspring. The filmmakers had already captured sequences of these behaviors, but the morning of May 30th promised something even more dramatic: the fledglings' first attempts at flight. The team began work early. Camera operator Derek Manning positioned multiple rigs along the slope, anchoring tripods into uneven stone. Sound technician Lisa Park monitored microphones, ensuring the delicate cries of the chicks and the rush of falcon wings would be preserved in crisp detail. Clara directed from a shaded seat between boulders, watching both equipment and sky with equal concentration. The crew carried standard supplies: energy bars, trail mix, sandwiches, sealed in waterproof bags. Normally, they secured everything tightly with carabiners or stored food in containers designed to deter wildlife. Yet the heightened focus on filming caused lapses. Several bags were left near camera gear, easily accessible rather than locked away. It was a small oversight, but in wild country, even the smallest oversight can alter events drastically. Black bears roamed the surrounding forests. Though generally shy around people, they were opportunistic and guided by extraordinary senses of smell. In recent years, populations had been thriving thanks to conservation measures. Yet the spring of 2023 brought a complication. Drought conditions reduced the availability of berries, nuts, and other natural staples. Driven by hunger, bears sometimes investigated human camps in search of alternatives. The animal that would soon disrupt the film shoot had almost certainly been tracking scent for hours, following faint air currents that carried traces of food down the slopes. Quiet as shadows, black bears could move undetected through thick undergrowth, their heavy frames disguised by silence and patience. Clara first sensed something wrong, not through sound, but through the falcons. The adult birds began circling their nest with sharp, repeated calls of alarm. Their agitation was unmistakable, yet it did not resemble the response to other raptors or intruding birds. Instead, it suggested a disturbance below, closer to the ground where the filmmakers sat. Moments later, a dark figure emerged from the thicket about 30 yards down the slope. The bear moved with steady confidence, its glossy coat reflecting flecks of sunlight. Mature and well-built, it weighed an estimated 300 pounds, its shoulders rolling powerfully with each stride. In an instant, the atmosphere shifted. What had been a morning of patient anticipation transformed into a moment of immediate danger. The cliff offered spectacular vantage points for cameras but left little room for retreat. Derek instinctively stepped back, only to realize the rock wall rose sheer behind him. Lisa scrambled to gather loose food bags, desperate to remove the lure that had brought the animal so close. Clara, positioned squarely in the bear's path, tried to assert her presence, raising her arms and moving with exaggerated gestures in an attempt to deter its approach. At first, the bear seemed curious more than aggressive, pausing to study the unfamiliar figures. But when Clara's efforts escalated into louder movements, the dynamic shifted. What she intended as a warning display may have been interpreted as a challenge. In a heartbeat, the animal lunged forward. The charge was swift. Within seconds, the bear reached Clara, striking with claws that tore across her forearms. Pain erupted as deep lacerations opened, blood flowing freely. She staggered backward, struggling to shield herself, caught between instinct to fight and the knowledge of how little power a human possessed in such an encounter. Derek and Lisa reacted instantly. They created a barrage of noise, clanging tripod legs against rock, shouting at the top of their lungs. Bags were hurled toward the bear, not as weapons but as distractions. The strategy worked. The animal hesitated, torn between its initial target and the sudden chaos erupting around it. For several agonizing minutes, the standoff continued. The bear paced, testing the space, assessing threats. Its presence dominated the narrow ledge, each step punctuated by the scrape of claws on stone. Finally, whether unnerved by the noise or satisfied that the intrusion was not worth the risk, it began retreating. Slowly at first, then with greater confidence, it descended the slope and slipped back into the cover of dense forest. The crew rushed to Clara's side, adrenaline still surging. They applied field dressings, wrapping her injuries tightly to control bleeding. Her arms throbbed with pain, but she remained conscious, insisting they move quickly towards safety. The descent was cautious, every snapped twig in the forest stirring fresh anxiety, but no further encounters occurred. By the time they reached lower ground, the shock was beginning to settle in. The reality of what had occurred pressed upon each of them. For Derek and Lisa, the experience underscored the vulnerability of working in wilderness settings, where preparation and knowledge could still be overturned in seconds by unpredictability. For Clara, the incident left scars both physical and psychological, yet also deepened her understanding of the untamed world she had dedicated her career to documenting. The cliffs returned to quiet after the crew's departure. Falcons continued their flights, chicks tested their wings, and the forest reclaimed its rhythm. Yet for those present on that day would remain unforgettable, a stark reminder that the boundary between observer and participant in the natural world can vanish without warning. The remote wilderness region of eastern Russia's coastal territories had served as a critical supply corridor for isolated forestry operations since the Soviet era. These vast stretches of untamed landscape, characterized by dense coniferous forests and unpredictable weather patterns, required regular helicopter deliveries to maintain essential operations at distant logging camps and research stations. The area's brown bear population, among the largest in the world, presented constant challenges for personnel working in these isolated locations. On May 19, 2019, pilots Ivan Petrov, 42, and Sergei Volkov, 38, had accumulated thousands of flight hours navigating the treacherous terrain and volatile weather conditions that characterized this unforgiving region. Both men possessed extensive experience delivering supplies to remote outposts, having worked together as a team for nearly 8 years. Their reliability and expertise had earned them recognition as two of the most dependable aviation professionals operating in the territory. The forestry outpost they were scheduled to supply that morning sat nestled in a clearing approximately 200 kilometers from the nearest permanent settlement. The facility housed 12 workers who conducted timber surveys and maintained fire prevention equipment throughout the surrounding wilderness. Regular supply deliveries occurred every 2 weeks, weather permitting, carrying everything from food and medical supplies to replacement equipment and communication devices. Worker Alexei Moroz, 29, had been assigned to assist with the morning's supply delivery, a routine task he had performed dozens of times during his 3 years at the outpost. The process typically involved unloading cargo containers from the helicopter's bay, while the pilots remained with their aircraft to ensure a quick departure if weather conditions deteriorated. The entire operation usually required less than 30 minutes to complete. The helicopter touched down in the familiar clearing just after 9 o'clock that morning, its rotors gradually winding down as Ivan performed his standard post-flight inspection procedures. The aircraft carried approximately 400 pounds of supplies, including canned goods, dried foods, medical equipment, and replacement parts for the outpost's generator system. Sergei began opening the cargo bay doors while Ivan secured the cockpit controls. Alexei approached the helicopter to begin the unloading process, noting that the surrounding forest appeared unusually quiet that morning. Wildlife activity in the area typically included various bird species and smaller mammals, but the complete absence of natural sounds should have served as a warning sign. Bears often caused other animals to flee an area, creating an unnatural silence that experienced wilderness workers learned to recognize. The massive bear emerged from the tree line with devastating suddenness, likely drawn by food odors emanating from the cargo bay. The animal displayed the impressive size and muscular build characteristic of the region's brown bear population, estimated at well over 600 pounds. Its appearance suggested a mature male in prime condition, capable of incredible strength and surprising speed despite its bulk. Ivan was positioning cargo containers when the bear struck, moving with the fluid grace that made these predators so dangerous in close quarters. The pilot found himself trapped between the aircraft's structure and the attacking animal, unable to reach either safety or defensive equipment. The bear's powerful claws inflicted massive trauma as Ivan struggled desperately to escape the confined space. Sergei attempted to reach the cockpit area where emergency gear was stored, but the bear's aggressive behavior and the helicopter's cramped interior made movement nearly impossible. The animal's sheer size effectively blocked most escape routes, while its violent thrashing damaged critical aircraft components. Sergei suffered severe injuries as the attack continued within the confined space. Alexei witnessed the entire horrific encounter from his position near the cargo bay, initially frozen by the shocking violence unfolding before him. His wilderness training eventually overcame his paralysis, and he began implementing standard bear deterrent techniques. He shouted at maximum volume while throwing metal supply boxes toward the animal, hoping to distract it from its assault on the trapped pilots. The makeshift distraction efforts proved insufficient against an animal of such size and determination. The bear continued its attack for several more minutes before apparently losing interest in the now motionless figures within the aircraft. The animal eventually wandered away from the helicopter, disappearing back into the dense forest from which it had emerged. Alexei approached the devastated aircraft with extreme caution, confirming that both pilots had succumbed to their massive injuries. He immediately activated the outpost's emergency communication system, reporting the tragedy to regional authorities, who dispatched a rescue helicopter within hours. The incident investigation revealed that food storage protocols had been properly followed, suggesting the bear had been attracted by natural odors rather than any negligence on the crew's part. The traumatic experience left Alexei with profound psychological scars that required months of professional counseling to address. He eventually transferred to a different assignment, unable to continue working in the remote location where he had witnessed such devastating violence. Regional aviation authorities subsequently implemented additional safety protocols for supply operations in known bear habitats, including expanded perimeter surveillance and mandatory deterrent equipment for all unloading personnel. The windswept bluffs of a remote Alaskan coastal island had attracted serious big game hunters for generations, offering some of the most challenging and rewarding hunting experiences in North America. These dramatic landscapes, characterized by steep ridges, dense alder thickets, and expansive tundra meadows, provided ideal habitat for both migrating caribou herds and the massive brown bears that roamed this wilderness. The island's isolation, accessible only by chartered aircraft or boat, ensured that hunting pressure remained minimal and that wildlife behavior remained relatively natural. On July 18, 2022, hunters Sam Reed, 39, and Lily Thompson, 42, had spent months planning their expedition, studying topographical maps and weather patterns to optimize their chances of encountering trophy-quality caribou. Both possessed extensive hunting experience in rugged terrain, having pursued various game species across Alaska and Western Canada for over a decade. Their partnership had been refined through years of successful hunts, combining careful preparation with the ability to adapt to changing field conditions. The bluff where they positioned themselves that morning offered commanding views of several game trails, frequently used by caribou moving between feeding and resting areas. The elevated vantage point provided tactical advantages, allowing the hunters to observe animal behavior at a distance while minimizing their own presence. Previous scouting trips had confirmed regular caribou activity in the area, making it an ideal location for a patient approach. Sam established a shooting position among scattered boulders that offered concealment and a stable rest for accurate long-range shots. His rifle, chambered in a powerful caliber suitable for large game, was equipped with high-quality optics capable of precise adjustments at extended distances. Years of practice at both ranges and in the field had honed his marksmanship skills to a level that ensured clean, ethical kills. Lily positioned herself approximately 50 yards higher on the ridge, where she could spot approaching animals and coordinate potential shot opportunities. Her role as spotter required constant vigilance and an understanding of behavioral cues that might indicate the presence of suitable trophy specimens. The coordination between hunter and spotter had been sharpened through many expeditions, allowing them to act as an efficient team. The morning progressed in routine fashion, with scattered sightings of caribou that remained at distances too great for a responsible shot. The animals appeared cautious, possibly influenced by the presence of predators in the area. Their heightened alertness should have served as a warning about potential bear activity nearby. The massive brown bear approached their position with the stealth that made such apex predators uniquely dangerous to unwary humans. The animal had likely detected their scent hours earlier and had been methodically tracking their movements across the bluff. Brown bears on the Alaskan islands displayed intelligence and predatory instincts that allowed them to stalk prey with remarkable efficiency, often approaching within striking distance before revealing their presence. Sam first sensed danger when he heard the heavy crunch of footfalls on loose rock behind his position. His experience told him this was no caribou, and the deliberate nature of the movement suggested a predator. He began to turn when the bear burst from the cover of vegetation less than 20 yards away. The animal displayed the sheer size that made the island's brown bears legendary among hunters and wildlife biologists. It appeared to be a mature male, possibly weighing close to 800 pounds, with the massive skull and powerful build of a prime specimen. Its coat gleamed with the healthy sheen of an animal well fed during the summer season. Sam's first reaction was to fire a warning shot into the air, an attempt to deter the bear without escalation. The tactic proved ineffective. The animal showed no hesitation and continued its charge with accelerating speed and unmistakable intent. Sam realized immediately that defensive action was unavoidable. The impact of the charge knocked him backward across loose rocks, scattering his gear as he tried to steady his rifle. The bear's claws raked across his torso and thigh, leaving deep wounds as he struggled to regain control of his weapon. The predator's immense strength became clear as it easily overpowered his attempts at resistance. From her vantage point above, Lily observed the attack unfolding and recognized the immediacy of the threat. Though her rifle was designed for long-range precision rather than close-quarters defense, the circumstances demanded immediate intervention. She steadied herself, adjusted her aim for the moving target, and fired. Her shot struck the bear squarely in the chest cavity. The animal staggered, took several steps backward, and then collapsed with a thunderous impact on the rocky slope. Sam, though severely injured, remained conscious and able to assist in applying basic first aid. The encounter underscored the unpredictable nature of wilderness hunting and the ever-present dangers of predator encounters. Survival in such circumstances depended on preparation, clear thinking, and the kind of partnership that allowed swift and decisive action. Both hunters later credited their escape to years of training, reliable equipment, and the coordination that had carried them through countless hunts, but had never before been tested under such dire conditions. On October 12, 2021, the mountainous regions of central Japan continued to face rising human-wildlife conflicts as expanding development encroached upon traditional bear habitat. These steep valleys, once dominated by pristine forests and alpine meadows, had grown increasingly fragmented, hosting scattered farming communities that raised livestock and cultivated crops in the challenging terrain. The local Asiatic black bear population, pressured by shrinking habitat and periodic food shortages, had begun displaying bolder behavior around human settlements. Farmer Hiroshi Tanaka, 45, had managed his small mountain farm for nearly 2 decades, raising sheep and cultivating vegetables in terraced fields carved into the hillside. His property bordered extensive forest land that supported numerous wildlife species, including the black bears that had grown more troublesome in recent years. Long experience had taught Hiroshi to remain constantly vigilant, especially during autumn when bears foraged aggressively to prepare for hibernation. His daughter, Emiko, 18, had grown up surrounded by the rhythms of farming life and developed an instinctive understanding of both livestock management and wildlife behavior. She regularly assisted with evening chores, helping secure animals and equipment before nightfall, when predator activity was most likely. Her sharp observation skills and quick decision-making had already prevented several potential livestock losses during earlier bear encounters. The family's flock numbered 23 sheep, which grazed freely during daylight hours before being secured each evening in a reinforced enclosure near the farmhouse. These animals represented a critical part of the farm's livelihood, providing both meat and wool that contributed substantially to the family's annual income. The loss of even a few sheep to predation threatened serious financial strain for the modest farming operation. That late summer evening began like countless others, with Hiroshi and Emiko guiding the flock from open pasture toward the protective enclosure. The sheep moved steadily along well-worn paths, shepherded by trained border collies that had worked alongside the family for years. The peaceful scene reflected routine and order, offering no outward sign of the violence about to unfold. Unbeknownst to them, a massive Asiatic black bear had been watching the farmstead's routines for some time, learning the patterns of human and animal activity. These intelligent predators possessed an uncanny ability to evaluate food sources and identify optimal times for raids, minimizing the risk of confrontation while maximizing reward. This particular bear's approach took advantage of natural concealment in thick brush and rocky outcroppings that lined the path to the enclosure. The ambush came suddenly. As the flock entered the narrowest section of the trail, the bear erupted from cover. Panic spread instantly through the animals. Several scattered downslope into the brush, while others were trapped between the predator and the enclosure fencing. The bear's strength and claws proved devastating against the defenseless livestock, and the flock's cohesion disintegrated in seconds. Hiroshi reacted immediately to the unmistakable sound of an attack. He seized a pitchfork from nearby equipment and rushed toward the disturbance. Years of farming had prepared him for emergencies involving weather, illness, or predators, though few situations compared to confronting a bear of this size at such close quarters. The tool he carried was better suited for posturing and noise than for real defense against a determined carnivore. As Hiroshi closed in, the bear shifted its focus from the sheep to him. Whether perceiving him as a threat to its meal or simply as an additional target, the animal launched forward in a charge that demonstrated the remarkable speed of Asiatic black bears. Despite being smaller than other bear species, they retained the raw power and agility to overwhelm a human in seconds. The farmer's pitchfork offered little protection. The bear's claws tore across his arm and shoulder, opening deep wounds that bled immediately. He struggled to stay upright, using the tool only to slow the animal's advance. The reality of its power was undeniable. Hiroshi faced a predator fully evolved for close combat. From her position near the farmhouse, Emiko saw her father's peril and acted without hesitation. She deployed the deterrent methods local authorities had long recommended, striking metal feed buckets together and shouting with all her strength. The cacophony startled the bear, pulling its attention momentarily away from Hiroshi. Not stopping there, Emiko hurled farm tools and feed pails in the animal's direction, increasing the impression of multiple threats. The combined noise and flying objects disrupted the bear's concentration enough for Hiroshi to withdraw toward the safety of nearby buildings. Though the bear remained in the immediate area, it no longer pressed its attack on him directly. For nearly 10 minutes, the animal lingered near the pasture, nosing at scattered feed and injured sheep, while showing no clear intention of retreating. Only gradually did its interest wane. At last it turned back toward the forest edge, moving into the thick vegetation that concealed its departure. The aftermath was grim, but not catastrophic. Several sheep bore injuries, and fencing had been torn apart in the struggle. Hiroshi's wounds, though serious, proved less severe than initially feared once proper medical care was administered. The family had survived, though shaken by the close call. Local officials responded swiftly, implementing enhanced bear management measures that included improved livestock enclosures, early warning advisories, and stronger deterrent strategies for farms near forested slopes. For Hiroshi and Emiko, the incident reinforced lessons already learned through years in wildlife country. Survival often depended on quick thinking, coordinated action, and respect for the power of predators living alongside human communities. On August 15, 2020, the wilderness meadows of northwestern Montana drew outdoor enthusiasts and wellness practitioners with their beauty and quiet. These high-elevation grasslands, surrounded by dense forests and dramatic peaks, offered a profound stillness that few urban residents ever experienced. Hiking trails wound through steep terrain to reach these isolated places, and the difficulty of access meant that human impact remained low, allowing wildlife to thrive in the alpine environment. The meadows provided both sanctuary for animals and inspiration for people seeking refuge from modern life. Yoga instructor Nina Patel, 34, had created a unique style of practice that blended traditional yoga with wilderness immersion. She built retreats around the idea that movement, meditation, and breathing became more powerful when performed in wild, undisturbed settings. Her events appealed to those who wanted to move beyond studio walls, replacing mirrors and polished floors with mountain air, open skies, and the sounds of nature. Years of training, combined with her knowledge of outdoor safety, prepared her to manage groups in these challenging conditions. The meadow chosen for that morning's practice lay hidden in a natural bowl of land framed by steep peaks. It required a moderate 3-hour hike from the nearest trailhead to reach. Level ground allowed for mats, wide views enhanced meditation, and the distance from common paths ensured both privacy and calm. Nina had used this site before, and earlier retreats had taken place without major incidents. The group for this session consisted of 8 participants who had hiked in the day before and camped nearby. They came from different backgrounds and carried varying levels of yoga skill, but they shared a common desire to experience wellness in a natural setting. Ages ranged from 26 to 58, and all had the stamina needed for hiking, camping, and outdoor living. Nina placed mats in a circle so that each person could see the surrounding peaks and also maintain eye contact across the group. The practice began with grounding exercises, drawing attention to natural soundscapes, the soft rustling of branches, the birdsong scattered through the air, and the subtle flow of water from a stream running close to the meadow's edge. These sounds became part of breathing and meditation, woven into the rhythm of the group's movements. Roughly 30 minutes into practice, a grizzly bear emerged from the eastern tree line. The animal, a mature female estimated at nearly 400 pounds, carried the heavy build and thick coat of a healthy mountain predator. At first, its behavior seemed exploratory, curious rather than hostile, as it studied the strange gathering before it. At the perimeter of the meadow, several participants had left backpacks containing energy bars, dried fruit, trail mix, and other staples. Following best practices, food should have been sealed in protective containers or suspended from trees, yet the calm atmosphere had created a lapse in vigilance, and the bags rested on the ground. The bear moved toward them, shifting quickly from curiosity to determined foraging. Strong claws ripped open zippers and fabric, spreading personal gear across the grass. Trail mix spilled like scattered seed, wrappers whipped in the wind, and bottles rolled away. The animal sorted through items with practiced efficiency, testing each by scent. Sunscreen was dropped after a brief examination, while a bag of fruit received prolonged attention until the packaging shredded. Margaret Thornberry, 58, noticed the disturbance while in the middle of a breathing exercise. Shocked, she realized their camp provisions were being destroyed. She tried to signal the others quietly, attempting not to draw attention toward their group. Nina soon noticed her participants' focus had shifted toward the meadow's edge. She understood instantly that 8 exposed people in open grassland, with limited cover and no easy routes out, faced serious danger. Experience taught her that bears often weighed whether humans posed a threat or were simply a nuisance. At this stage, the animal still seemed relaxed, though fully absorbed in the search for food. Relying on her training, Nina began calm, deliberate preparations. She encouraged participants to stay composed, to move slowly, and to gather mats and belongings without panic. The goal was to guide them to a cluster of large boulders roughly 40 yards away, where they might gain some shelter or elevation. Handling 8 individuals in an emergency demanded coordination. Nina emphasized staying close as a unit. Scattering would expose everyone and risk triggering pursuit instincts. Among the group, David Chen, 31, displayed particular steadiness. A repeat participant, he calmly collected equipment and helped others do the same, while keeping his gaze fixed on the bear. His composure steadied those around him, preventing panic from spreading. For several minutes, the bear remained intent on scavenging food. This pause gave the group valuable time to organize themselves, but periodic glances in their direction revealed that the animal was becoming aware of their movement. When the group began shifting toward the boulders, the bear abruptly changed course. It abandoned the scattered food and advanced with deliberate interest. Nina stepped forward, positioning herself between her group and the animal. She lifted her jacket and projected authority, as wilderness experts advise when attempting to deter bears. The response was swift. The grizzly surged across the meadow with astonishing speed. Despite her efforts, Nina could not hold it back. The bear's claws struck her across the torso as she attempted to shield her participants. The wounds were painful and bleeding but did not strike vital organs, sparing her life. The group reacted in unison, rallying around their injured instructor. They produced loud noise, banging bottles together and shouting, while waving items to distract. Some threw personal gear toward the bear to divert its focus. Though improvised, the collective effort created confusion for the animal. After tense moments, the bear relented. Deciding the encounter was not worth the effort, it withdrew toward the trees. Within minutes, it had vanished into dense cover, leaving behind torn equipment, scattered food, and a deeply shaken group. Immediate attention went to Nina's injuries. First aid supplies were applied, bandaging wounds enough to allow safe movement. Once stabilized, the group began their evacuation, making the careful journey back toward professional medical care. The incident left a permanent mark on Nina's outlook. Though she continued leading wilderness retreats, she overhauled safety procedures, working directly with wildlife specialists to refine protocols. She emphasized awareness of the risks inherent in wild environments and stressed the responsibility of respecting the territory of animals. For her, the meadow remained a place of peace and beauty, but also a reminder of how swiftly tranquility in the wilderness could give way to danger.